Imagine, for a moment, the sheer volume of information your brain has processed just since you woke up this morning. The pings, the screens, the alerts, the infinite scroll of social media feeds, the browser tabs left open like unresolved thoughts. We are living in a moment where the human nervous system is under an unprecedented, relentless assault of stimulation. Never in the history of our species have we been exposed to this level of continuous, aggressive digital noise. It makes you wonder what actually happens to us when the brain completely loses the ability to experience silence. What happens when modern humans no longer control their own attention?
That is the defining question of our era. Because human cognition simply did not evolve for this, our brains were optimized over millions of years for focused attention, for acute environmental awareness, and for deep, rhythmic sensory processing. But today, modern digital systems are engineered to compete aggressively for that exact attentional control. And the result is a nervous system that becomes deeply fragmented. It becomes overstimulated and hyperreactive. We often brush this off as mere distraction, a lack of discipline. But it is much more severe than that. We are looking at the biological destabilization of attention itself.
Biological destabilization. That is a heavy phrase. It shifts the blame from our own supposed laziness to the environment we are swimming in. It implies that modern technology companies are essentially competing for one finite resource above all others, which is human attention.
Exactly. Attention has become arguably the most valuable commodity in modern civilization. Entire industries are built on the science of capturing and holding human focus. The algorithms behind our screens are meticulously designed to maximize engagement, to push novelty, to trigger dopamine anticipation, and to provoke emotional activation. When you are exposed to this constantly, the brain becomes conditioned toward rapid switching. We are training our neural pathways for constant scanning and fragmented focus. The nervous system is kept in a state of high alert, meaning it rarely, if ever, settles fully into a state of rest.
So, if I am understanding this correctly, we are essentially being biologically trained to remain distracted. We are adapting to the chaos.
A very accurate description. And it is a tragic adaptation. Focused cognition, the kind of deep thought required to solve complex problems, to create art, or even to truly connect with another human being, requires stable prefrontal cortex activation. It requires working memory stability and strong attentional filtering. But when you introduce constant interruption, you are repeatedly resetting those attentional networks. The brain actually becomes addicted to the novelty and the anticipation of the next alert. Over time, deep work doesn't just become inconvenient, it becomes neurologically difficult. The circuitry required for sustained focus physically weakens.
That is terrifying. It means distraction isn't just a bad habit, it is physically rewiring our attention circuitry. I think everyone listening can relate to that feeling of sitting down to read a book or do a deep piece of work and feeling this phantom itch to check a screen after just 3 minutes.
Precisely. And that itch is purely chemical. It brings us to the role of dopamine in digital hyperstimulation. There is a common misconception that dopamine is simply the pleasure chemical. It is not merely pleasure. Dopamine regulates motivation, anticipation, novelty seeking, and attentional pursuit. It is the chemical of wanting, of seeking out the unknown.
Which is why the unpredictability of the digital world is so addictive. You never know what the next notification will be. It could be an urgent work email, a message from a friend, or breaking news.
Correct. Every single notification creates a state of potential reward uncertainty. The nervous system becomes trapped in these continuous, looping cycles of anticipation. You check the phone, you get a microdose of novelty, the dopamine spikes, and then it drops, leaving a deficit that compels you to check again. This fragments attention biologically because your brain is chemically incentivized to abandon the present moment in search of the next digital stimulus.
Meaning the brain becomes chemically conditioned toward interruption. It's like we are carrying a slot machine in our pockets and we are pulling the lever every few minutes, draining our own cognitive reserves in the process.
Beautifully said. And there is a massive metabolic cost to this fragmented attention. Attention switching itself is incredibly expensive for the body. The brain consumes an enormous amount of energy, specifically glucose, just managing task, switching, decision-making, and attentional filtering.
So, when people say they feel mentally exhausted at the end of a day where they haven't done any physical labor, that exhaustion is literally biological.
Very much so. Every single time you are interrupted, your neural networks are forced to recalibrate. Imagine driving a car and slamming on the brakes every 10 seconds, then accelerating, then braking again. The amount of fuel you burn is astronomical compared to cruising at a steady speed. This constant recalibration increases mental fatigue, cognitive inefficiency, and emotional exhaustion. The overstimulated brain becomes energetically depleted.
It's a vicious cycle. The digital noise drains our biological fuel, leaving us too exhausted to engage in the deep, restorative focus we actually need. And there is another layer to this that I want to explore. While we are consuming this massive amount of digital information, we are sitting physically still. We are disconnected from our physical environments. We are ignoring nature, ignoring the weather, ignoring the physical sensations of our own bodies. Screens are essentially replacing our sensory experience.
A profoundly important issue, and one that is often overlooked in conversations about digital wellness. Humans evolved through touch, movement, immersion in nature. We evolved to process texture, temperature, smell, and direct environmental interaction. That rich, multi-sensory diet is what our nervous system expects, but modern digital environments flatten all of that sensory diversity into pixels, notifications, and abstract information streams.
We are visually and cognitively overloaded, but physically and sensorially starving.
Exactly. The nervous system becomes visually overwhelmed while remaining physically undernourished. Think about the environment our nervous system evolved in. It evolved within rhythmic, natural environments. The sound of flowing water, the rhythm of breathing, the cadence of walking, the rustling of leaves. Nature presents sensory information in a way that is rhythmic, layered, predictable, and biologically coherent.
It makes sense. When you walk through a forest, there is a lot of sensory input, but it doesn't exhaust you. It actually restores you.
Because it aligns with our ancient neurological expectations. Digital environments, by contrast, are fast, fragmented, high contrast, and unpredictably stimulating. There is no natural rhythm to a social media feed. It is a barrage of disconnected contexts, a tragedy, followed by a joke, followed by an advertisement, followed by a political argument. The nervous system struggles to regulate itself under this continuous artificial novelty. It is a fundamental evolutionary mismatch.
So modern stimulation doesn't just distract us. It violates the ancient neurological expectations of our own bodies. We are feeding our brains a diet of pure, refined digital sugar, and we are wondering why we feel sick. This brings us to the inevitable question of survival. If our biology is being hijacked, how do we fight back? You have spoken before about the concept of a sensory audit.
Yes, because modern humans must intentionally protect their attention now. It is no longer something we can take for granted. A sensory audit is a process of ruthless evaluation. We must ask ourselves, what deserves access to my nervous system? What is continuously draining my cognitive energy? What is fragmenting my attention unnecessarily? Reducing this digital overload becomes a literal form of neurological self-defense.
I love that framing, neurological self-defense, because we often try to solve the problem of overwhelm by adding more to our plates. We download productivity apps, we try to optimize our schedules, we listen to podcasts at double speed to learn faster. But you are saying the solution isn't adding more systems.
Not at all. Sometimes reclaiming focus requires subtracting stimulation. We have forgotten the biological necessity of nothingness. Silence itself becomes biological medicine. The nervous system needs periods of zero input to consolidate memory, to process emotion, and to restore its baseline equilibrium.
Silence as medicine. That is a powerful paradigm shift. So how do we practically rebuild human focus in a world that is so loud? How do we reclaim our attention when everything around us is designed to steal it?
Through intentional sensory restoration. We have to purposefully construct environments and habits that allow the nervous system to relearn stillness, depth, and sustained attention. This means carving out time for deep single-tasking work. It means intentional nature exposure where you leave the phone behind. It means returning to tactile reality cooking, building something with your hands, engaging in physical movement, and most importantly, it means embracing uninterrupted thought.
It sounds so simple yet so rebellious in today's culture. Sitting quietly in a room, doing one thing at a time, or doing nothing at all.
It is an act of rebellion, but it is a necessary one. Because focus is not merely a tool for productivity, we have commodified focus, thinking of it only in terms of how much work we can produce. But focus is much deeper than that. Focus is biological coherence. It is the state in which our minds and bodies are aligned, present, and fully engaged with reality.
It makes you realize the true stakes of this conversation. Perhaps the greatest crisis of modern civilization is not climate change, or economic instability, or even information overload. Perhaps the greatest crisis is attentional collapse. Because if we cannot focus, we cannot solve any of those other problems. We lose the very mechanism that makes us capable of deep thought, empathy, and innovation.
That is the ultimate truth of our era. Because wherever attention goes, biology follows. If we allow our attention to be continuously splintered, our biological and psychological health will fracture along with it. In a world that is meticulously engineered to fracture the mind, protecting your focus may become one of the most important acts of human survival.
Wherever attention goes, biology follows. That is a thought that will stay with me for a long time. It forces us to look at our screens, our habits, and our daily rhythms, not just as lifestyle choices, but as fundamental decisions about our own humanity. We must choose whether to remain fragmented by the noise or to deliberately reclaim the quiet depth of our own minds. Thank you for this profound exploration into the architecture of our attention. This is a conversation that every modern human needs to hear.